Also, I know that this story kind of took over the hockey world for a little bit, and we had not made any sort of video or acknowledgement about it on the channel at all. That changes here. What I wanted to do was head over to Ottawa and talk about a player who just got signed to the next big deal in Ottawa Senators history. Now, we've had a few of these long-term contracts get inked over the past little while here, which is a good change from what we're used to seeing with the Senators and Pierre Dorion. You know, the Mark Stone, Erik Karlsson situation from all those years ago about the unwillingness to go long-term with superstar caliber players. It appears that that sentiment is no longer with the Sens, as you have guys like Josh Norris, Brady Tkachuk, and now Tim Stutzle getting long-term deals, much to the pleasure of the fan base. So, let's talk about Tim Stutzle, the contract that he just got, and how it compares to another young star in the NHL, a guy taken a year before Stutzle had been in the NHL Entry Draft, and a guy whose contract is getting brought up in a lot of these discussions here. We're talking about the Ottawa Senators guy Tim Stutzle, and we're also talking about New Jersey Devils center Jack Hughes. Firstly, on to the primary news, though, that we got for Jimmy Stu. This is the contract that he was given just a few days ago. It's 8 years long on an extension, making $8.35 AAV. So, the total contract is, oh my goodness, I cannot do mental math off the top of my head, 835 times 8. That is a $66.8 million contract, which is going to be pretty good for this guy. And his family, too. This is what he said about the contract after it got signed. My parents don't have to work anymore. That's number one. Now, before we get into any of the good or the bad or whatever, Jimmy Stu, he's a good dude. And whether or not you're a random person on the internet like me, or somebody making millions of dollars playing a professional sport, I think everybody can go out there and agree that, yeah, that's the right mindset to have about all this. Just keep out there, look out for the ones that helped you get to where you are, show appreciation to your folks. That's kind of what is good here. So Jimmy Stu going out there getting the bag, I definitely do feel happy for him and his family. However, there have been a few conversations popping up as to why this contract was signed, what exactly the Senators are doing here with this type of move, and how much of a gamble this is both ways. Because obviously, Tim Stutzle is only 20 years old. He'll be 21 by the time January of 2023 rolls around. He's 6 feet 190 as a left-handed center left-wing player, and he's got a contract that will see him making, 10% of the Ottawa Senators cap hit heading until 2031? Now we know that over the next 10 years, the cap is going to rise. It's not going to stick around in the $80-ish million area that it is right now. We'll probably see a cap that gets a little bit higher once 2030 is here. But at the same time, $8.35 million is a lot of money to be paying for a guy who has only played a total of 132 NHL games and has only gotten 87 points. Now you could say on paper, hey, this guy's only at a 0.6 point per game in his entire NHL career. Do you really want to go out there and shell this amount of money for this long for a player of this caliber? And a lot of Sens fans would go out there and say, yeah? Stutzle, as a 19 turning 20-year-old, had 58 points in 79 games played this previous season with the Sens. That is probably a number that's going to grow as his career goes on. We've been seeing him get better, a little bit more agile, a little bit smarter, and a little bit better at scoring too throughout the 2 seasons he has spent in the NHL. We've always known that he's had a high ceiling. When he came into the league, a lot of people said, hey, if this guy hits his absolute prime, he might be a player that goes out there and gets 90, maybe 100 points on a season. And on a young Ottawa Senators team, boasting the likes of guys like Norris and Tkachuk and all these other young assets that are on the squad as well, there definitely is a good opportunity for growth for all these guys, not just for one Tim Stutzle, but for everybody involved that also has a long-term deal attached to his name. So for Tim Stutzle, as he gets better alongside of the Norrises and the Tkachuks, one may go out there and say that, hey, Tim Stutzle might be able to go out there and get 70 points on a season as soon as, let's say, 2024. If that happens, all of a sudden, boom, that $8.35 million is probably justified. And if he gets as good as he can get, then maybe he gets 90 points sometime down the line, and he's even better on paper when you compare the contract to the production. This is a gamble for the long term, and it's one that I think is a pretty educated risk to be taking because we know how good Tim Stutzle is supposed to be and how much he has improved. Of course, though, there is the possibility that Tim Stutzle does not improve at all. Maybe he goes out there and regresses. Maybe he absolutely sucks by the time 2025 rolls around and he can't actually play at the NHL level anymore. He's getting bounced up and down on the third, fourth line, and he can only max out at 20 points on a season. There's a reality where that's possible, but I don't want to go out there and say that it's likely. And so, for players of the magnitude of talent that Stutzle provides, these are the guys that you go out there and you make your bets on, and that's what the Senators are doing with the money that they've shelled out to him. This is where the other conversation comes in. Let's talk about New Jersey Devils center Jack Hughes, because when Tim Stutzle signed his deal, one of the biggest conversations that I saw amongst Devils fans was, hey, that's 8.35. That's more money than Jack Hughes is going to be making next year. And they're both signed to 8-year deals that'll take them to at least 2030. Jack Hughes was the first overall pick in 2019, and he's signed to an 8-year deal with an AAV of $8 million that kicks off in 2022-2023. Tim Stutzle has one more year on his entry-level deal before he gets that 8.35 AAV starting in 2023-2024, so even though they're both 8 years long, Tim Stutzle expires in 2031, Hughes expires in 2030, and Jack Hughes is a guy that went out there and had 56 points in 49 games played the most recent season. He's already over a point-per-game player. He's also a better player than Stutzle is right now, but he also is a year older. And if you really want to compare Hughes to Stutzle, you're going to have to go 1 year back for Jack, because this season that he just played was his Draft Plus 3 year, whereas for Tim Stutzle, he's going to be entering his Draft Plus 3 year in 22-23. Jack Hughes, in the 2020-2021 season, had 31 points in 56 games played, a point production comparable that, if you do the math, is actually much worse than what Stutzle did in his Draft Plus 2 year. Where Jack Hughes had his .55 point per game metric on this season, if you do the 31 divided by 56 calculation, Tim Stutzle had 58 points divided by 79 games, which is a .7 something, a .77, I believe, point per game metric on the season. That's a lot better than what Jack Hughes was able to accomplish. And so I don't want to go out there and suggest that everything is linear and next season Tim Stutzle is going to be over a point per game because Jack Hughes was over a point per game. None of these things are linear. But if you were to go out there and say, with the New Jersey Devils mindset that, hey, this guy was producing X amount of points when he was 20 years old, let's sign into a contract extension that'll kick in the next season, and then we'll be on our way, the money that Tim Stutzle is going to be getting is not all too ludicrous, and in fact, it could be seen as a pretty good steal if he does fulfill the ceiling that he has. Jack Hughes can potentially go out there and score maybe 90 points next year. If he does that, I wouldn't be too surprised. If he scores 95 points, I wouldn't really be too surprised. For Tim Stutzle, he's on a path where if he scores that amount of points, let's say in 2023, 2024, I'd feel that's kind of right on pace for where he's supposed to be as well. You gotta remember, Hughes was a 2019 guy, Stutzle was a 2020 guy. They made the NHL in their first years after getting drafted right away, and so both of these players are kind of following the similar trajectory of being franchise potential caliber centers, just with a year's worth of difference in growth between them. And because there's a year in between, there's a reason why the cap implications are kind of different as well. I mean, Hughes at $8 million flat heading until 2030 is probably going to be a pretty good deal when the guy starts scoring 100 points a season. And for Jimmy Stu, him at $8.35 is just pretty standard because, I mean, the cap raises just a little bit. It makes things a little bit easier to digest the extra $350,000 per season on the AAV. Plus, Stutzle's given a lot of signing bonuses, for the start of the year. So there you go. That's him going out there and helping his family. But talk in the comments all your thoughts if you're a Senators fan or a Devils fan about Jimmy Stu and this contract extension that he has. How does it compare to Jack Hughes in your opinion? And for a lot of Devils fans, please don't go out there and hijack the comment section saying that Hughes is going to be the best contract in the NHL. I definitely do think it's possible, but man, I've seen Devils fans everywhere going out there and spamming that conversation all down our throats that I would not want this comment section to just hijack the Ottawa Senators Tim Stutzle discussion, because I do think there is a good one to be had there when it comes to Jimmy and the Senators. But either way, I'm kind of joking here, so joking aside, talk to the comments all your thoughts about Stutzle, talk to the comments all your thoughts about Hughes, the two contracts, and these two guys and their futures. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 99, and bye.